Hey everyone, Adam at Droid Media here, and in today's video we're making apple boxes. Apple boxes are a staple on film and video sets, and for good reason. They have a ton of uses, from adjusting the height of gear and actors to allowing a crew member to sit down somewhere in between takes. And they are one of the more versatile and useful pieces of equipment that you could possibly have in your kit. Now, a set consists of 4 apple boxes: a full, a half, a quarter, and the tastiest pancake. And normally these retail for well over $100 US. And today we're going to be making a set all of our own for around 30 bucks. Materials you'll need: 1 4-foot by 8-foot, 1/2 inch sheet of plywood. You can find this at most local home improvement stores. I bought 2 4-foot by 4-foot sheets because they're easier to transport. Either way, this should cost you between $18 and $25 US, depending on what kind of plywood you get. And then you'll need some wood glue and some short coarse thread screws. I think mine were 1 1/4 inch drywall screws. You can use whatever you have, or do like I did and just ask your dad for some of his. If you got a full 4-foot by 8-foot sheet of plywood, the first thing you want to do is cut it exactly in half so that you have 2 4-foot by 4-foot squares. It's going to be way easier to manage these 2 smaller sections. Grab one of your squares and put it up on your sawhorse or workbench. Mark 20 inches in across an entire side. I measured and made marks every few inches, and then used the straight edge of a level to mark my cut line all the way across. If you only have 2 sawhorses or supports, you'll want to make sure they are both under the larger section, and the 20-inch wide piece we just measured will fall off when we cut it. You can make all these cuts with a handsaw or a jigsaw, but it's easiest with a table saw or, like I'm using here, a circular saw. Go slowly and follow your line all the way across. Now we want to cut this into 4 12-inch by 20-inch rectangles. These will be used as the tops and bottoms of our boxes. Measure 12 inches in from one end. I measured and made marks in a few different spots and then drew a line across just like I did earlier. Cut this 12-inch by 20-inch piece out. Move your board out a little so you don't cut the other piece below, and repeat this 2 more times. A quick note: because your blade is probably 1/8 of an inch wide, the last piece that you cut out is going to end up being like 11 and maybe 1/2 or 5/8 inches wide instead of 12. That's totally okay, because we're going to have another piece that matches it a little bit later on. Grab the other piece of plywood, and now we're going to repeat these exact same steps we just did on this one. Measure and mark at 20 inches all the way across, and cut that piece off. Set the thin extra strip aside for now, and then on the 20-inch by 48-inch piece, measure and cut out 4 12-inch wide pieces again. You should now have a total of 8 12-inch by 20-inch pieces. These are going to be the tops and bottoms of our apple boxes. Grab the other 4-foot by 4-foot piece and put it up on your sawhorses. We're going to cut another 4 tops and bottoms off first. A full set is only 4 boxes, but there should be enough left over to make another 2 halves, 2 quarters, or 2 pancakes, or some combination of that you would like. Cut out the 4 more tops and bottoms, just like we did a moment ago. Now we'll work on the sides and ends. Grab the remaining piece of plywood, and on a thin side, measure and mark at 20 inches, and then cut this piece off. Measure and mark one of the thinner ends so that you have a 7-inch by 20-inch rectangle. Cut that out, and then repeat that step one more time. These 2 pieces will be the sides of our full apple box. We'll now repeat these steps, but we'll mark and cut 2 3-inch by 20-inch pieces. These will be the sides for our half apple boxes. And repeat this one last time for our quarter apple box sides. These will be 1-inch by 20 inches. You should now have 2 1-inch pieces, 2 3-inch pieces, and 2 7-inch pieces. Now let's work on the ends. All of these are going to be 11 inches wide, so we'll need to cut our wood down into a few 11-inch wide segments. Measure, mark, and cut an 11-inch wide strip. From there, we'll be making 3 11-inch by 7-inch pieces. So measure in 7 inches, mark, and cut. Repeat this 2 more times. You should now have 3 11-inch by 7-inch pieces. These are going to be the 2 ends and 1 middle support of our full apple box. Let's cut another 11-inch wide strip. From this, we'll be cutting out ends for our half and quarter apple boxes. Start by measuring and marking a 3-inch by 11-inch piece, and then repeat that. You should have 2 11-inch by 3-inch pieces. Now measure, mark, and cut a 1-inch strip. This is a great time to remind you to double check your measurements and definitely double check your cuts. Repeat this step so you have two 11-inch by 1-inch pieces. Let's double check that you have all of your pieces before moving forward. 8 12-inch by 20-inch pieces, 2 7-inch by 20-inch pieces, 2 3-inch by 20-inch pieces, 2 1-inch by 20-inch pieces, 3 7-inch by 11-inch pieces, 2 3-inch by 11-inch pieces, and 2 1-inch by 11-inch pieces. I forgot to mention that there's also a drinking game for this video specifically, where you take a drink every time I say the word inch. We now need to cut holes in our ends so that we can easily pick up our apple boxes and move them around. Grab the ends and support for your full apple boxes, the 7-inch by 11-inch pieces. We want to drill 4 1-inch holes in each of these pieces, and then we're going to cut out these middle sections so that we have these nice long handles to grab onto and move this thing around. Measure in 1.5 inches from each longer end, and then measure 3 inches in from each of the shorter ends. This should give you 4 intersections where we'll cut our holes. We want the holes to be 1 inch in diameter, and the easiest way to get this is by using a 1-inch spade drill bit. Drill your 4 holes, and then repeat this for all 3 of the other pieces. Now we need to cut out the sections between the 2 holes, so use a ruler or something straight to mark this area off, make sure they're going long ways, and then using a jigsaw, cut those pieces out. Mine were looking pretty ugly at this point, so I ended up touching them up a bit. Just be careful if you're using a jigsaw because they're great at making curved cuts and you can easily go overboard when trying to even things out. And at the end of the day, if they don't look perfect, who gives a shit? We're making functional filmmaking gear, not running an apple box beauty pageant. Now get your 3-inch by 11-inch pieces, and we want to drill 2 holes in each of these, in similar spots to what we did on the larger pieces. Measure 3 inches in from the thin side, and 1.5 inches in from the long edge. This should give you 2 intersections along the middle of that piece. Drill 1-inch holes again, and repeat for the other segment. Like with the larger pieces, we want to cut out the section between the 2 holes, so use a ruler or a square and give yourself some guidelines to cut. And then using your jigsaw again, cut out those pieces. I'm a total idiot and I forgot to do that during this point, so I had to do it after my boxes were already put together, which is a pain. Grab the ends to our quarter apple boxes, those thin little ones, and we want to drill 2 holes on these as well. Measure in 1/2 inch from the long side and 3 inches in from each end. And you'll want to use a smaller drill bit here. I went with a 5/8 inch drill bit for these. Be really careful on these ones because there's not a lot of room for error. Once you have all the hand grip holes cut, you'll want to use a router to round off the edges. Since you'll be using these to hold and carry the boxes around, be sure to do both sides. If you don't have a router, you can also use a Dremel with a sanding attachment or even just some spare sandpaper to smooth out these handles. Regardless, you'll want everything smooth to the touch before we move on to the next step. Now that we have everything cut and prepped, it's time to assemble our apple boxes. Inch. Grab your tops and bottoms and find 2 that are pretty close in size. For my pancake, I like to use those pieces that were a little smaller than the rest, the 11 and maybe 5/8 inch wide ones. Because we're not going to have any screws in this one, you can be pretty liberal with that wood glue. Spread some glue on both sides and press the boards together. Clamp them in a few spots to make sure they're held tight together, and then set that box aside to dry. Now grab 2 more of the top and bottom pieces and your 4 1-inch pieces so that we can make the quarter apple box. I made these boxes in smaller steps. I tried putting entire boxes together all at once the last time I made these, and it was really difficult, so I recommend you do it incrementally like I am here. And there's no rules on what order you do any of this stuff in. That's the best part about DIY projects. But back to the boxes. Here I grabbed a bottom piece, one of the side pieces, and then using some wood glue, I first attached the side, and then I used some clamps to hold it tight while it dried. If you notice any spots bowing in or out, use some additional clamps to hold it in place where you want while it dries. And be sure to wipe off any excess wood glue that you see on the outside of the box. We don't have to wait long for any of our pieces to dry, maybe 20 to 30 minutes tops. We just want the glue dry enough to hold this first piece steady while we assemble everything else. After this is dried a little, glue and attach your other side, and then glue and attach the end pieces, clamping down as you go, and wiping any excess glue off the outsides. Once the sides have dried just a little bit, you can glue and attach the top, Once the top is on, you'll really want to clamp the shit out of this to hold everything together. Let this dry for at least a couple of hours with the clamps on. Grab 2 more bottom pieces and the 3-inch sides and ends. We're going to do the exact same thing here for our half apple box that we did with the quarter box. Start by gluing one side down to the bottom, clamp it, and let it dry for just a little bit. Then glue and attach the other side and both ends. Clamp these and let them dry for a little bit too. And then glue, attach, and clamp down the top. As you're assembling your boxes, be sure everything is lining up and squared off. Use clamps as needed to hold things in place, and let pieces dry for longer if you need to so that your boxes come out nice and even. And be sure you're wiping any excess glue off as you're clamping these together. Once everything is clamped down, set that one aside to dry. Now repeat this process for the full apple box. The only difference here is that the full apple box will get a support in the middle, so you'll need to glue that in about 10 inches from each side. But otherwise, the steps are all the exact same. As always, take your time, wipe off any excess glue on the outside of the box, and be sure to clamp everything down real tight. You should now have 4 apple boxes, and these are so close to being done. We're going to add in a little bit more stability to these because we don't want anyone standing on them and getting hurt later on down the road. To do this, we want to put a few screws in them. Since we're working with 1/2-inch plywood, we'll need to drill some thin pilot holes first. Grab a small drill bit. I think I was using a 1/16 inch bit. On the tops and bottoms of each box, you'll drill 8 holes. 2 along each edge, and then on both sides of the box you'll drill 1 hole along the ends. For the full apple box, you'll also want to drill a few additional holes along that middle support. Repeat this for the half and quarter boxes. The pancake doesn't need any screws. Since other people will likely be using these, we want to make them as safe and comfortable as possible. So you'll want to use a router or sander to smooth over all of the edges and corners so that there isn't anything sharp or any loose pieces that could give someone a splinter. Once you've sanded the edges down, I'd recommend going over each box with a sander and some medium grit sandpaper, like 100 or 120 grit. This will allow you to even out any minor imperfections. I even went over all the boxes with a 220 grit sandpaper afterwards to make everything really smooth to the touch. And now you should have your very own set of apple boxes. A few notes on this project. If you followed along and still have some additional wood, you should have enough left over to make 2 additional boxes as part of this project. That will give you 6 apple boxes for under $30. Now a full 4 set of these retails for over $100, so that is a killer deal. This is one of the better things that I think you can make on your own when it comes to DIY filmmaking. If you have any comments or questions about this project, please leave those in the comments section below. As always, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video, and I will see you next time. Hey everyone, Adam with Troy Media here.